Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this is episode 291. I am joined, as always, by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyPatton89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you enjoying this double victory Monday that we have here?
Yeah, I mean, what could we possibly have to talk about today? I don't know, but yeah, doing pretty good. Um, yeah, my voice is recovered from Friday night, so that's good. Still got the shirt. Uh, this is what they gave out at the Garden. You got the Willis Reed patch on the
Nice.
side. The other side,
Yeah, you got the Chase Freedom patch too. That's good.
yeah, Chase Freedom, Willis Reed. I don't know.
Before we get started, we have to make a few announcements. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the strict.land on Instagram. We are posting all kinds of new content on there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are and you haven't already, hit like and then subscribe to the channel. That would be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, new merch. There's Quickly merch. There's Brunson merch. We also have some old merch. We have RJ Barrett water bottles and mugs. They're great. Uh, check all that out. We've got a lot of shit on there. And then finally, the Strickland has a Patreon which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There is a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, this podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to the Strickland mailbag hosted by Drew, aka Doug, aka the Doug Bag, that comes out every other week alongside Dallas Amico. You also get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There is a $9 tier that gets you access to Strick and Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits like listening in on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day. Whether you choose to subscribe or not, none of this would be possible without you. So without further ado, let's get started. The Knicks won 2 basketball games this weekend. They beat the piss out of Cleveland on Friday. 99-79 is the first time all season any team has failed to score 80 points. So shout out to Cleveland making history. And then yesterday, the Knicks won a more competitive game, 102-93. But honestly, it felt like the Knicks left a lot on the table, and they probably should have been up more at halftime. They just had a bad stretch to start the third quarter, but other than that, they dominated the game. I mean, they controlled the game, and that was with Randle playing like I don't know what the hell was going on with him yesterday, and quickly didn't score, and Grimes was out, and it didn't matter. And like, I mean, RJ played awesome, but he couldn't buy a three. Like, even with all of these things, the Knicks completely dominated the game, and watching that fourth quarter to me, especially, you can just see how much more versatility the Knicks have, and not just in terms of they have better depth, but they have a lot of players who can perform different tasks. And I will say this: if you're watching on YouTube, you see it says a Thibs masterclass, and I want to give him a ton of credit because in real time yesterday, when he took out quickly to put in a Hart, I didn't like that substitution. Not because I didn't want Hart on the floor. I just generally thought the spacing is better with quickly, and you wanted Brunson to get in space. But what he did correctly, and what he must have realized in real time, and that's why idiots like me don't get paid to coach. They were blitzing Brunson so heavily that it opened up all of these 4-on-3 opportunities. And if you go back and watch the game, quickly got a swing on a 4-on-3, and he drove, but he kind of hesitated. He ended up getting a foul on Garland, but he basically took him out. I think maybe the possession or two after that. And from that point on, every
I
time
think
they
quickly also fouled a 3-point shooter. He'd been playing superb defense. That rotation on Allen that led to the Hartenstein block. That was, I mean, I think Benji clipped that, but I
yeah,
think that was right after he fouled Osman shooting a three, right?
No, that was
Which
in the first half. He fouled Osman in the first half.
I do think he
But
got taken out after that, which that is, I can imagine Tibbs' reaction
yeah,
to
I think RJ was actually already at the table, but yeah, I mean, he got. I mean, it made sense to take him out there anyway. But yeah, like after that, he put Hart in that spot, and they just they didn't have anything. You know, if they trapped Brunson, RJ and Hart were punishing them. If they didn't trap Brunson, Brunson was just cooking guys. So you just look at and like this isn't to say that there aren't 4-on-3 opportunities where maybe Quickly performs better than Hart, but the fact is you can put multiple guys in that spot on this roster. You can have Obi be in that spot. You can have RJ be in that spot. You can have Quick be in that spot. Like you have so many different options. You can have Brunson be in that spot if they start trapping Quickly, right? Like you have options to put in these different roles. And, you know, Thibs also made another, like he started screening with RJ out of a timeout. And they got the 2 possessions right after that when they started running the screens for RJ. He got a wide open corner 3, which he missed, but then Obi got the rebound and he had that spectacular play where he circles around and then makes a layup.
took
And then,
Mitchell to the hole, took him to the
yeah,
hole.
yeah. And then the possession after that, um, RJ got a driving layup out of it. So like you immediately saw his tactical choices pay dividends. And I mean, I've been critical of him obviously in the past, and this year increasingly, I've been very impressed with like some of his adjustments. Not just in game, but broadly. We've talked about the rotation changes endlessly, but like to see that yesterday, um, you know, the ability to have small pick and rolls, guard wing pick and rolls, wing guard, like just the willingness to do those things and to trust his players just speaks volumes. I think probably about really everybody in the organization, from the front office, really building out a talented and deep roster, to the players coming along and finding strides. I mean, RJ Barrett, I can't say enough about the last 2 games he's played. I mean, he's been spectacular in games 3 and 4. He was fantastic. And it's just really awesome to see, because I was not optimistic after the first 2 games and after what we saw in the regular season, but to see what he's doing offensively now, I mean, in these 2 games has been special. And, so, kudos to all the players, but, him specifically in that sense. And then you also just have to credit Tibbs for like, I think he does really love this team. And I think that he really, look, when you're with guys now for 3 years, like there's probably a certain level of trust that he has that he didn't have initially. And it's not always perfect, because it's never going to be always perfect, no matter who the coach is. But, he's pushing the right buttons and he's making good adjustments in game. You know, could he have adjusted defensively a little quicker in the third quarter? Sure. But on aggregate, you have to say that he's winning the coaching matchup in this series as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, some of that is just that he does have more versatile pieces, but he's willing to use them in that role. And he's doing it in ways that, quite honestly, we didn't always see from him in the previous season. So I just wanted to say, like, RJ was awesome and Brunson was awesome and Mitch was fucking amazing yesterday. And Hartenstein. I mean, all these guys, literally, you can just point to everybody aside from Julius yesterday, and I was pretty happy with everything everybody did. But man, Tibbs, he deserves some kudos too. So shout out to him, and obviously just everybody in the organization. Just a really, really awesome weekend, and feels like, the Knicks. Look, they got to win one more, but I love their odds. I love their chances.
Yeah, coming into this series, before the series, we had Jordan Cohen come on, and I think he echoed a sentiment that I've seen from a lot of Cavs bloggers. So we coming to the series, we said the Knicks are going to let Okoro shoot. They're going to let even Levert. They're going to help off of, and they're going to live with that if they get beat by those guys. And the Cavs bloggers mostly were saying the same thing. And I think the Cavs' defensive approach has echoed this. They were going to let RJ Barrett beat them. They were not. They were not worried about RJ Barrett. And coming to the series, I thought, we both, talked about some of the struggles. He's had ups and downs, but I think like one team he always plays well against is the Miami Heat, who also feature a small guard, or a smaller guard in Tyler Hero. For what it's worth, I think Darius Garland is a significantly better defender than Tyler Hero, but that matchup remained for Barrett, right? His physicality being probably something that he could exploit against these Cavs guards. Struggled to finish in game one, but I like really only game two is the game where I thought his offensive process was bad. Game one he had a couple of the transition gaffes, but the last two games you saw it all come together. And the thing is, you can talk about the scoring. I thought he was incredibly effective going to his right. Cleveland was shading him there. He was taking that space. He loves that little inside hand finish. He was even hitting, some of those. I mean, that fadeaway at the end is the kind of shot we'd probably, would not like from him. He could have kicked it out to a shooter, but he was feeling it. He was in the zone, and I mean, it set the Garden on fire. But it was also things. He had a great possession and transition defense on Mobley, where he stripped him. And then I think Mobley got the ball back, and then they called a foul on RJ, which was ticky tack. But I loved his effort there. I thought on defense, he's been pretty good all series, with a few maybe lapses in help defense. He was just as big a part of it as anyone else yesterday. I put him back on Garland in the beginning of the third, or to your point, later in the third. After Garland, I thought that was a good adjustment from Bickerstaff. And just a side note, it's kind of a lesson I think to many people, and I think Thibs has taken advantage of this too with how he got. How he's gotten Brunson going, and even quickly in game three, especially using them a little bit more off ball. Even if you want to run them a screen, run some action first to get the defense in motion instead of just, the point is, like, if you have a matchup you think you want to attack, it doesn't mean the only way to do that is just put them in the middle of the floor and run a screen or just go ISO. And there's very few guys that's actually a great move. The Cavs have one. Garland can be that, and I think he will be in a matter of time, but that's not his forte right now. And the Knicks have a guy like that. But even then, you still want to kind of get them the ball in some advantageous positions. So I thought Bickerstaff made a really good adjustment. He started, he had the pin downs for Garland, and Brunson had been top blocking them. So Garland, he took advantage with a back cut in the first half. And I think on what was really a nice wrinkle there was they had Mitchell Robinson. A lot of people said, well, Mitch should have been there. It was an easy dunk for Garland, but they had Jared Allen positioned outside and they had Mitchell on the other side. So given how the Knicks were playing, it shows also that even if you have a paint bound big, you can manufacture some spacing.
Well, I think Allen was like screening for somebody off ball as a decoy.
Yeah,
I think, yeah,
right. So you can create spacing, or you can create those rim opportunities, even if you have a paint bound big by doing these kind of things. That's why Hartenstein is so aware of that. It's another reason he's been good. But I thought that those are good adjustments by Bernie, but I'm sorry, by JB. But the Knicks eventually adapted. They moved Brunson back onto LeVert, and that was a matchup the Cavs had attacked, but they weren't able to do it. I think quickly coming in helped stabilize the defense a little bit. And then they were going through Donovan, and he was in hell all game. And I have to say this: you were talking about how many guys. I will say this: Deuce McBride had maybe the most impactful 5 minutes since the last time I hung out with your mother. Like, I was sitting on that line. Sorry. I thought that he was.
I think he rattled Mitchell. Like I thought Mitchell tangibly after Deuce came in, before and after, he felt like something happened in that stretch, and he just did not look
and
nearly the same to me after.
And I don't want to take away anything from Josh Hart, because I thought he played even before that. I think Mitchell didn't get off to a great start, but you could see he had a step back on Josh Hart that we've seen so many times create a ton of space late in the fourth, and I was like, oh, he's gonna make this. We've seen him hit those shots hundreds of times throughout his career, and he bricked it. And I don't want to compare my experience playing in the park to Donovan Mitchell playing in the playoffs, but it's worth, like, you've probably been through this where, like, if you're really playing a tough defender, you're having a tough time getting your shot off. When you finally get some space, sometimes you do get a little jittery and you're like, okay, I have to make this. Like, this is my shot. So I think to your point, I do agree. Like, it got him out of his element. And Deuce hit his three. Credit to RJ, made the right kick. I think that helps too when guys trust you instead of forcing the shot. And I mean, like, that last possession, someone else pointed this too, that possession that everyone's clipping, right, where he was in Mitchell's grill, fought through the screen, forced Mitchell into a crazy shot, which to his credit, he nearly hit. Deuce did a great job of avoiding the foul there too. He moved his hand away. That's something he's developed over the course of the season too. But it goes down, and someone else said, like, Deuce would probably be getting 15, 20 minutes on this Cavs team. I mean, they're throwing Ricky Rubio out there, Danny Green. Like, pretty sure he can get minutes over those guys. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think top to bottom, and they imposed. I mean, they imposed their will, and we coming to this series, the Knicks shooting has improved since Josh Hart got here, or the shooting percentages, but the formula has always been low turnovers, high offensive rebounds. And in the first game, they had like reasonably, it was like they did fine on the turnovers. They killed them on the offensive glass. Second game, they didn't do either. They turned the ball over a lot and gave up a lot of, and didn't win the rebounding battle. Game three, they got back to it, low turnovers, didn't dominate the glass. And yesterday, they did both. And I will say, like, the last thing I'll note is, to your point, it felt like really, you said the early part of the third quarter. I really think that the offensive doldrums started maybe midway through the second. I think just Brunson started doing. So this is kind of what I'm getting towards, but the offense really got into a funk. That was the opportunity to really deliver. In the NBA, there's no knockout punches in the second quarter these days, but with how defensive this series has been, going to halftime with a 16, 18-point lead would have been huge. Instead, the Cavs actually had it at single digits, despite Mitchell having a half from hell, the Knicks having 11 offensive rebounds. Knicks also, I think, only turned the ball over 4 times. Cavs turned the ball over 9 times. All that and only a 9-point lead. Knicks also missed free throws and stuff. And I think Brunson was in a funk for a good, from the middle of the second quarter to the middle of the third. And his decision making, I didn't like a lot of. Like, I think there were multiple opportunities with the traps where he wasn't getting the ball out. And it's very difficult to to keep that going. Um, I'm sorry, it left a lot to be desired, and that was right when the Cavs started to make a run. So I actually didn't love Jalen Brunson's game yesterday, but to his credit, you look at the box score, finished with 29 points on 22 shots. He's averaging 24 for the series. He's been the best guard in this series, and it hasn't really mattered. Um, I think that it said something that, like, he hasn't really had a nuclear Jalen Brunson game, but he's really just been killing it. Or he's been the best guard in the series, and hit some huge shots. So yeah, I mean, it was really all around good performance, and yeah, like going back to RJ. So I mean, the point is that, like, I thought Brunson had large stretches where I was not happy with his play, and he still ended up with 29, an efficient 29, and hit big shots, and keep up with some big defensive plays in the first half. He's a really good player. And then going back to RJ, I think that there were a couple of like the 3-pointer does look better just to the eye for me. There were a couple of threes late in the fourth where it just rattled out that could have been daggers. One of them, I believe it was Obi got the rebound, or it might have been no, it was Hart. It was Josh Hart got that rebound, kicked it out to Brunson, and he finished it. But I really wanted those shots for RJ too, because it's a guy who's been struggling with his jumper, and he really he took good looks. There's really, I mean, if we get this RJ Barrett, nobody is talking about that contract in any kind of way. Nobody's maligning him. He's not getting left off of top 100 lists. And he's the perfect third guy. I mean, especially with the defense and what he's able to provide. It's the exact third guy, and he's been the second guy this series because Julius Randle really hasn't showed up. And so I think that when you look at those things, um, that's a scary thing. That I don't know what was up with Randall yesterday. I don't know if he's still going through the injury, but it was like it didn't even feel like it wasn't like the Hawk series where he he was really rattled by their defense, or making bad decisions, or forcing it, or forcing bad shots. He just, every time he got the ball, he would do that little 2 dribble sidestep pull up on Mobley, who knew it was coming. And I get it, you don't want to force the action, but he just played with no force, and he was completely invisible on defense. It was very different from the type of game that you've normally seen from him, where it's a bad game. We've seen bad Randall games, but we've never seen him just completely be invisible like that, or it's rare. So Thibs said a lot of guys wouldn't be playing. Um, and this would be and this is a quick turnaround. He's still hurt, or he's not. He's coming back from the injury. He said his ankle's fine, so it's probably a question of conditioning. He just didn't have it yesterday. But that opened the door up for Obi Toppin, and Obi Toppin stepped in, and I mentioned this on Twitter. He made a three. He had that nice take, but he only scored 5 points. 5 points on 5 shots. He's usually not what we see from Obi when he has a really good game. He's usually getting a lot of buckets. It was really just he won this game. He had a huge defensive rebound late. He had a huge defensive rebound late. So I think he did it, and he got back in Thibs' good races by doing some of the dirty work. He was doing an excellent job on defense, very active, getting on the glass, and continue to help accelerate the ball movement. And the Knicks are going to need Randle to step back up, but and they're not going to win a whole lot more without him. But it's pretty impressive that they've been able to do this with him. I think this was the first game where I think Randle's offensive process was bad. Like, I think he generally made decent decisions, especially game 1 and game 3. Forced a little bit game 2, but he was just absent yesterday. So I don't know what your thoughts are on Randle, but do you think that was just conditioning issue, the short turnaround, or do you think he's just in his own head? Do you think it was a bad matchup for him, or?
I think he's in his own head, and I think I said after game 1, I don't remember what the hell he shot from the field. He didn't shoot well. He hasn't shot well in any game, really. But I said then, I don't care about the stats. I don't, especially in this series, I think it's just an ugly series. You just need to battle through it. I don't care about his shooting percentages right now. I care. Obviously, I do care. But, I don't think he can shoot poorly, and there are ways that he can influence the game. Yesterday, I don't know what the hell was going on with him. And
he was invisible.
I know that people, I know after the game, Thibs made it a point, and other guys made it a point to be like, he's not at 100%. I think Thibs said something like,
a lot of guys wouldn't be playing.
Yeah, and that's cool, and that's really good that they said that, and it's, I guess, it's okay. I don't even know what to say about that, but one, I would say that I suspect that they're exaggerating that a little bit to cover for him. And two, go watch the start of the game. The first 2 possessions Cleveland ran, they ran a pick and roll and they put Julius in the action, and he was terrible on both of them. The second one, Mitch came over and kind of erased it, but he was terrible. He didn't contest. He didn't have his hands up. He didn't know what the fuck he was doing. He wasn't defending Mobley, and he also wasn't doing a good job of stopping Garland's penetration.
They even put him on Okoro late. They put him on Okoro,
and he got blown by the baseline.
That first block that Hartenstein had, right, the spectacular block where he threw the outlet, that was Randle got completely cooked on Okoro, who is a non-shooter, and he just drove by him. The very next possession, he did the same thing, and that time Hartenstein couldn't get over in time.
Yeah,
and it was just an embarrassment. But I do think that looks to me like physically he's not there. He wasn't there.
But he has that block on Mitchell, which is an incredible athletic play that he made. So I don't buy that. I'm sorry. And the fact of the matter is, maybe Thibs is right, and maybe they're all being 100% honest, and Julius is moving heaven and earth just to be on the court. But then he's just hurting the team, and he shouldn't play. Or it's just ridiculous to watch what he was doing yesterday. I mean, there was that possession where Mobley got the offensive rebound. If you watch Julius, he's just doing nothing on that play. He's just standing around. And there was one play in defensive transition where he starts pointing at somebody else as Garland's driving, and he's the help defender there. He didn't make a rotation. He just watched. And Garland ran a quick pick and roll in semi-transition, and Allen got a dunk. And it's I'm not saying I'm not necessarily even expecting Julius to stop Allen there, because it was a really well-run pick and roll, but he's got to rotate. He's got to make the rotations. He's not doing that. He didn't do anything yesterday. It was really absurd to watch. He had 2 rebounds in 27 minutes. I mean, I don't know what to say about that. Meanwhile, you've got Obi Toppin. He had 8 rebounds yesterday. He had 5 on the offensive glass. He had more defensive rebounds, and he had more offensive rebounds than Julius had total rebounds yesterday. That's an embarrassment.
Half the minutes, a little more than half.
He played 20 minutes last night. That's probably the most he's played in a playoff game. But it's just ridiculous. It was ridiculous to watch that. And, like this is so like, you watched that game yesterday and I forgot who I was talking to about this, but it was like did Quickly play particularly well yesterday? Offensively, not so much. And I think he missed some shots in the beginning and he just decided that like
He had some good looks that didn't go down
yeah,
too. Like he
yeah,
had a
yeah.
couple of those floaters were decent shots he
Right.
hits. It's just
And yeah, and he just didn't he kind of wasn't assertive when he came back in the second half offensively. But if you go again, watching back that game, like his defense yesterday, he totally changed. Garland was cooking, absolutely cooking, especially at the start of the third quarter. And once Quickly came in, all that shit stopped. All of that, all these mid-range pull-ups and back cuts and all that shit, it stopped immediately. And you watch him on these possessions, as soon as, if the Knicks made a shot, he's like pressing Garland the entire way up the floor. He's not even letting him get a clean inbounds pass, so somebody else has to bring the ball up. And that shit is just disruptive, and it helps you, again, it helps you win the margins. And so, like, my point isn't like, oh, Quickly played this amazing game, but Quickly was a plus 11 yesterday. I don't actually think that's like some fluky thing. Like
he's the highest plus minus for the series, a plus 41 for the series.
Yeah,
so and that's with that disaster of game 2.
Yeah, so. And it's not like I don't think he's actually played great in this series at all. But that's kind of the point. Is like there are ways to impact winning, and Thibs says this all the time. You don't need to shoot well or to score well to play well, and you see that Quickly, and then to see that and juxtapose it to whatever the fuck Randle was doing out there last night. I mean, honestly, a little bit as a fan, like it's a little bit like insulting. I'm like, I just don't understand what that was. He's just not competing. And it's like, I can deal with missing shots and, bad turnovers and whatever, as long as there's like real effort being put in. And it just wasn't there at all with him yesterday.
You saw it too, because a couple of the possessions, so Julius Randle had he scored 3 times, he had 3 field goals. 2 of them I remember were in the second half after timeouts. Thibs specifically called plays to get Randle involved in screen action, and Randle got to his spots about 10 feet away. One of them was a really tough, to your point, an athletic play he made, fade over Mobley, which is a tough shot, but it's also a shot. Like the difference between Randle at 10 feet versus Randle at 20 feet is huge. It is massive.
He knows who he is in the mid post.
Yeah, exactly. But so that's the thing. Like I was like, why aren't they getting Julius involved in screen action? But Thibs specifically went to those things, and I think that was a wake up. This is what you need to do. Then Randle just couldn't be bothered to, or he wasn't doing it the rest of the game. You can say that Brunson for large stretches of this game I think didn't do a good job of getting people involved. I think there were multiple possessions. Brunson just ate away an entire shot clock. That was very frustrating to watch. But it's on Randle too to play with. Like Obi finds a way to get involved. Hartenstein finds a way to set a screener to be useful. Even though the shot he's not the stretch 5 that some people thought he might be when he hit some threes last year, but you have to, and Randle, when he has good games, finds ways to get involved. He doesn't just stand and watch, and he just played. There was 0 force from Randle yesterday, and
yeah,
the thing is, like, that is so outlier though from the kind of bad games I've seen from him in the past. That's why I do think like something was up. So
maybe something's up, but the Knicks are up 3-1, and you can quite reasonably say that Randle's been their worst player in this series. And that's awesome that like the Knicks are good enough to be capable of that. But it's also very concerning. And it's like, look, if they win this series without Randle playing well, that would be amazing. But like, look, this question is going to exist. But like, at some point, he needs to have a good playoff game. Like, he hasn't had a good playoff game. And I know the sample size isn't exactly huge here, but we saw him shit his pants for 5 games against Atlanta.
He had one good half in game 1. Like I thought he played really. That's it.
Yeah, and I don't think like this has not been Atlanta level bad. I mean, yesterday was, but like the previous 3 games, wasn't that. Like
he
wasn't
making the team. Yesterday, I think he kind of he hurt the team a lot.
Oh, I mean, the third quarter, he absolutely destroyed the team. Maybe he was terrible in that stretch. But like. At some point, like if he doesn't shoot well in the playoffs, then we need to just have a different conversation, and it's a huge limiting factor on this team. And like you compare that, and this is why, like look, this is not to take away anything from what Julius did in the regular season because he was immense. I mean, he was great in the regular season for us. But like, this is why I just hate the conversation that occurs when like Randle has a huge game and there'll be people like, oh, like you guys wanted to start Obi over this guy. And it's like, I mean, it's not a 1-for-1 thing. Like that's just not how basketball works. And you see yesterday, like, I think we've all talked about this, right? Play hard at the four, hard at the four. Yeah, like, and some of that is like, yeah, you get these downhill opportunities potentially, right? 4-on-3, his ability to get, but like with Obi on the floor, you can still do that. And we saw that yesterday. And like, I just, I don't know. Like, I know that Randle shot pretty well from 3 this year, right? But like, does anybody really feel like the spacing is as good? Like, I think there's just a natural spacing that comes with when you play Obi, even when he's not a particularly great shooter, because he's just always active off the ball in a way that Randle isn't. And that's like not even a criticism of Randle, just a reality. Like, he's not a great active cutter, he's just not doing a lot off ball. And that's fine. But like on nights or games and stretches where he can't make a shot, it's a killer. And if this is a long-term playoff thing where he just gets the yips, I mean, it's something they have to really think about this offseason whenever that, hopefully that doesn't happen for another couple weeks here, but like maybe, well, hopefully it doesn't happen until June. But it just, I'm sorry. Like, I can't deny that. I mean, I talked about this leading into the playoffs. I talked about this during that last stretch of 5 games that we had where he didn't play, where it was like, you just get glimpses of like what this team would be in a non-Julius world where Obi is the power forward. And like, I do think this matchup is good for Obi because Mobley is not some physical monster that can like muscle him.
Yeah, it won't. I mean, Giannis is going to be a lot. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Not to look ahead, but assuming that, and looking ahead in both series, by the way, assuming that they face someone like that, yeah, it's
Yeah. And so I get that, but like, there is something to I would say like the spacing, the pace, the movement offensively when Obi is in versus Randle. And I think it gets more out of like Brunson. I think it gets more out of Hart. I think it just opens up the floor for guys in different ways than it is when Randle's in the game. And like I forgot who said it before the season even started, but there's just like a different feel and there's a different pace. I mean, they talked when we played Cleveland that last game of the regular season, and after the game, Donovan Mitchell talked about it. He was like, when Obi's in, like there's a different speed they play with. And it's not like, the Knicks were running up and down the floor
he
yesterday.
specifically said, I think, when Randall's not in.
Yeah. Right. And so like it's not like the Knicks were sprinting up and down the floor yesterday, but it did feel different. And it has felt different this entire series. And like I don't know what that says. And I still like I think ultimately whenever the season does end, probably need to sit on it for a week and really think about like everything in totality. But for people that have been skeptical of Julius throughout the season, and it's like, we'll see in the playoffs, we'll see in the playoffs. I mean, I said that kind of like about him and Thibs was like, yeah, we'll see in the playoffs. I want to see. And Thibs, to his credit, I think has shown a lot. I think he's shown that like some of the stuff that he was doing in the regular season isn't just some like, it's not like he's abandoning everything, that he did. He's not. But with Randle, I mean, I can't lie. Like it is very concerning to see it. And yeah, I agree. Like his process the first 3 games was better, but like at some point you need to fucking make shots. Like if you're gonna be this high usage primary guy on the team and be the a focal point offensively, I can't have 4 fucking games of bullshit offensively. Like I need to see more than that. And like fortunately, Brunson obviously has really gotten cooking, but RJ has stepped up at the perfect time, which has kind of offset it and really glossed over some of Randall's struggles. But like, I thought I saw people really go. I thought people were going a little bit too overboard after the game on Friday, where it was like, look, it was a fucking fantastic win. Don't get me wrong, but like, it felt like people were like, oh, well, Randall's defense was still really good and blah blah. And it's like, yeah, look, it was fine. But he was, there was still plenty of Randall plays there where he's like jogging back in transition or he's not locked in pick and rolls. And it's like we need to really like, again, I can deal with shooting bad, but I need the rest of it then. And the rest of it hasn't really been as consistent as I think some of the credit that he's gotten, especially after that game 3, would indicate. Like I think he's dropped off defensively as the series has gone on, and that's a little bit concerning to me. So maybe it's the ankle, and maybe I'm just I'm rushing to be too critical of the guy, but like I can only be honest about how I feel, and watching how he played last game yesterday, and even the game on Friday, which we probably need to talk about that a little bit more because that was fucking awesome. But like watching that, I do get concerned, and I do really your mind starts to wander, right? And it's like, well, do the Knicks have? Do they maybe ultimately need to make a bigger move with him this offseason? I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I would imagine. So the thing is this, right? Like we were talking about this in the Discord. I think it was. I mean, I'm not trying to call out Tyrese. I think it's a fair point. But
No, we can
there's
call it Tyrese. Fuck Tyrese.
Tyrese made the point in our Discord that after he's been through all of this, they're not just going to turn around and trade him right after he's bounced back. But I
Why?
was like, but here's the thing, right? Last summer, the logic was you can't just. There's no point in dumping him when his value is at his lowest. Like you can't really have it both ways. I don't think both. I mean, I get that both can be true, but it seems to be a little bit of a very. It seems to be a little bit of circular or not circular. It does seem to be a little bit okay. So we just can't trade him ever. I would imagine like any good front office, and this from all everything we can see from all evidence points to this being a very competent front office that does things like due diligence. I would have to imagine, and they're also good about leaks or tightening up leaks. I would have to imagine they will at least gauge the trade value through back channels, through whatever it is. What is it, right? Is it if it's just like a first, then like Harrison Barnes or something, they're not going to do that. If you can get a real package for him and you have confidence that maybe that Mavs pick, well, you're not replacing Julius Randle with the Mavs pick, but maybe you feel like it probably you'd have to obviously get Brunson on board. He wouldn't be happy if you said we just made the maybe the second round of playoffs, maybe more, and you got rid of I think that Brunson is the best player on this team. I think a lot of people say Randle. I've said that for a long time. I think Brunson has made Randle a much better player than the reverse. Um, but I think they'll gauge that, and just we should. This is a happy day to your point, so we shouldn't belabor the Randle point. But the last thing I'll say is that I will say this, that I think that the Knicks have tried to play faster. The game seems to bog down when you have all three of Randle, Brunson, and RJ out there. When you have two, um, like when those two are Brunson and RJ, it's a little bit better. And when Randle plays with Quickly and Hart and the bench, he also seems to play faster. Um, and I do think that in terms of spacing, like when he took 7 threes and he was 3 for 7 from 3 in game 2, I think. Like Mobley was giving him those shots, and now he's been playing him a little bit tighter, and Randle hasn't capitalized on it because he keeps taking those. He took so many of those sidestep threes. I felt like every time he got the ball yesterday, that was just he just didn't feel like playing it. It's like sometimes when you're at a park, like someone wants to just practice their jumper or something, and they just just wasn't reading the floor at all. But I will say that like that does matter. Like a guy that big who can if we play the Bucks next series and it pulls Giannis out of the paint, that's not an insignificant thing when you have Brunson.
Is it going to
Um,
pull Giannis out of the paint though? Like this is
it's
where
been
we're at,
pulling
right?
Mobley out of the paint, but
It is, but like at some point, a team is just going to be like, well,
and that's what the Cavs were doing. And
yeah.
Randall can hit those though. It's not a shot I think Cleveland loves to live with. Um, but to that point, like I think like his ability as a shooter at that size, and it's not just that he can shoot at that size. He doesn't have that Jared Jackson set shot, right? He has a very high release. It's like nobody really blocks his shot. So I do think I would pump the like I would not be willing to say like I think it's a little bit more complex why they can play fast. But I do think it proves that like everyone was like, well, Jalen Brunson wants to slow the ball down and ISO, and that's a Thibs thing. It showed in that stretch that that's not 100% the case. I also don't think it's the case that Randall wants to slow the game down. I think he likes to get in transition too and grab and go, and he's shown flashes of that this series. But I think it's a little more complex than that. But to your point, like is Randall the ideal number 2 if Jalen Brunson's your number 1? Like if someone like I don't think the Clippers would do this, but if there is a package with Randle as a centerpiece that you can get someone like Kawhi Leonard for, these are the kinds of things. That's basically what the Raptors did, right? I think they will gauge the trade value. I do want to get before we talk about Game 3. I do want to talk about Deuce a little bit.
He was
You know,
awesome. I just want to say he was
phenomenal.
like you mentioned it, but I don't know if you can be as impactful as he was. And like, you're not supposed to be as impactful as he was in 5 minutes. I thought, again, like, I really feel like his minutes took Mitchell out of, Hart played really good defense. So this is, it's not really a knock on him at all. I just thought, like, sometimes having, like, this is the best thing about this roster, right? It's like you can throw different looks at guys, so different defenders. Sometimes, like, you get Mitchell's like been defended, like he's been faced up on Hart, right, and Grimes, and I think those guys are a little bit more physical because they're bigger than him, so they can like get into his body. It's a different thing. And then you have Deuce come in all of a sudden, and Deuce isn't like necessarily going to push Mitchell off his spot or something, but he just sticks to you like Velcro. I mean, he's just so good at mirroring guys. And I mean, that one drive where he tried to like pivot and put it up around him, and Deuce was just like, nope, my arms are very long. And then there was that other drive, which was fucking hilarious, where he like, Mitchell went strong to the hole, and he was like, he was about to elevate, and then he realized it was Mitch and not
Yes.
Hartenstein. And so then he tried to like go around him, and Mitch was like, nope, block that shit. Yeah, that was, yeah, Hart was, I mean, look, we didn't even talk about it, but Deuce was awesome, and you should definitely talk about that. And Mitch was, look, he's been the best big guy in this series. That's like, I can't say anything. There's nothing else to say. Like, people were talking about the Cavs have 4 All-Stars, the Cavs have 4 All-Stars. One, I never understood that because Mobley hasn't made a fucking All-Star team yet. And then two, like, Jared Allen he got the D'Lo All-Star. Like, you're an
Atlanta
injury.
Hawks All-Star.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're an injury replacement All-Star. Like, he's a good player, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of ridiculous to be labeling him as some kind of like perennial All-Star type dude. And Mitch has dominated him. I mean, he has completely dominated Allen in the
and
series.
before the series, people were like, they're not even close. Like people in Cleveland really think Mitchell Robinson is some scrub, like around the NBA. And there
And
are
offensively, just real quick before you continue, I just want to say this because Mitch's offense the first 2 games was rough. Really picked up the last couple of games. It looks like he's catching the ball cleaner again, which is nice to see. And then obviously the finishing has been better. And it helps. It always helps when Mitch can randomly knock in some free throws.
2 for 3 from free throw. That's
Yeah,
that's Steph Curry numbers for
it's
him.
basically Jerry West.
I think there was a point when the Knicks were just shooting awful from the free throw line in the first half. I think him and Brunson were the only 2 that hadn't missed a free throw of the guys who had taken it. So tied Jalen Brunson for the. No, I don't know how many offensive rebounds he had yesterday, and I think that Hartenstein helps there because people have asked, well, if Mitch is so good, why is Hartenstein closing? I think free throw shooting is a big part of that. But he was it's 7 offensive rebounds yesterday, which doesn't even feel like that insane. Double with 2 blocks. So I think Mitch was awesome. But getting back to Deuce, I did want to. So I understand why Deuce didn't come back in the second half. Hart was, Hart is a much better option against those traps. Deuce is still figuring out kind of ball handling. I will say to your point on spacing and those kind of things. One, I have said this a lot. I buy the shot from Deuce McBride with enough attempts. I think it's tough to like shoot a high percentage when you're getting 1 attempt a game, if that, and go games without playing. I do think that's a real thing. But like he has great chemistry with Hardenstein, really on both ends, but especially on offense. Like he's great at cutting, finding space. He is a really good off-ball player. But I get why, in the second half you needed stronger ball handlers. RJ was the best player on the floor yesterday. I don't think that's controversial to say. And Hart, there's a reason Thibs trusts him. So I get why.
You thought RJ was better than Brunson? I'm just curious. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just curious.
Yeah, one, like I said, I didn't love Brunson's process. You can make the argument that RJ got a lot of open looks and angles because of Brunson, but I also thought he was better on defense. He made an impact on the glass. RJ had a huge defensive rebound in the second half where he actually got hit in the head. He only had 2 rebounds all game. He actually got hit in the head by Mobley, but that was it was a really good rebound.
It was a different, I shit on Randle for only getting 2 rebounds. I didn't think RJ had a bad rebounding game. The ball didn't fall to him, but he wasn't giving up offensive rebounds. He wasn't like not boxing out his man.
And again, these are things that we've criticized him for in the past, and he did everything we've asked of him. you want to make the case for Brunson. He had some big time shots, and don't get me wrong, I'm probably grading Brunson on a pretty tough curve, and he's tasked against running an offense. Like, so I get all those things, but I think like if he wasn't the best player on the floor, it was close to it with Brunson. I get why Deuce didn't play, but at the same time, there's a reason why guys aren't that impactful for 5 minutes because they usually get more than 5 minutes if they play that impactfully. Do you think, regardless of Quentin Grimes' health, do you think Deuce has made the case for more minutes? And do you think we might see that play out?
Um, I genuinely am not sure. It's like it's really tough for a coach. I think like I know that Deuce has shot better from three over like the last couple of months. I think he was at like 40%. So I do understand why maybe the offensive limitations of him are exaggerated a little bit right now. At the same time, like he's still sometimes shaky with the ball, and if his defense isn't, if he has an off defensive game, you can't bank on him being able to offset that on the other end of the floor. And ultimately, like the Knicks have found a good rotation. They have found, or not like that it's set in every which way, but like I think Thibs has his 9 guys that he trusts. And I do think Deuce is like on the verge of being trustworthy for him, but that's probably something for next season. I do feel like he's a really good tactical option in this series specifically. Like he's really, really good for this matchup because their offense is so guard heavy, right? Like Brunson, Garland and Mitchell.
And even Levert, right? Levert
Yeah,
is he
right.
plays the three, but he's really a shooting guard.
Right. And those guys have to create everything for them. So like having him and what he brings to the table is really, really useful. But like I it's one of those things where it's like if the thing that we are considering, like, and maybe a little bit, I'm not saying you are, but like if there are people that are like, why the fuck isn't Tibbs playing Deuce more? We're probably in a pretty good place.
Yeah, and I think that to pour a little cold water, there is probably something to be said that like I don't think Deuce McBride was at the top of Cleveland's scouting report.
Mm.
And a guy like Mitchell, if Mitchell got a full series worth of reps against Deuce, one, he'd probably be fucking exhausted. But two, he'd probably figure some things out, right? Like a little bit was just, like guy comes off the bench, you haven't seen him before. But I think, and
but to that point though, Deuce has played very well against Cleveland defensively, at least every single time that we've used him in those games. Like, and that goes back to December 4th, right? When we made the rotation change, the first game was against Cleveland. He was really good in that game. And we know, the numbers bear this out. His defensive impact is real. I like
he's really good off ball too, by the way. He's not an on ball specialist. Like he can play off ball too. It's just
he's
so
not
menacing
like
at point of attack. Like
he's not like a. There are very few. Honestly, I
think it's like Pat Beverly's to me that what comes to mind, right?
Yeah,
like an on ball menace, off ball impact is a little bit.
Yeah, and it's funny because like I just watching quickly like on the rewatch I did this morning, like his off ball defense is absolutely fucking insane. Like some of the rotations he makes are I don't get it. Like I don't understand how you do all of the things he does. There was that clip of that play from game 3, right? Yeah, where he like no, it was in game 3 I think where Mobley comes down in transition and quickly picks him up because Randle's still like jogging back, and Randle comes over and for some reason doesn't raise his hands at all. So Mobley has this easy pass to the cross court corner and then quickly makes that rotation to contest the shot. And it's like the ground he covers is ridiculous. And it's why like, yeah, like, does he need to play better offensively? Sure. But there's a reason why there's there's a there's a reason why the Knicks keep winning his minutes, and it's what he does defensively. So that's a pretty. He was really good. Hart was awesome. His fourth quarter yesterday. I hated how he closed the first half. To be honest, I thought he was.
Because people, you mentioned this, right? But he kept whining for calls when it's like, no, dude, you're doing the same move every time in transition.
Yeah, maybe it is a foul, but at some point, if they're not going to call it, they're not going to call it. So
and they're not going to call it, and they're calling it differently in the playoffs. I thought it was better officiated. When the Knicks win, I like the officiating better. It's fair to say that, but I thought they called it reasonably even on both sides. I do think, but yeah, like he does that same move, which is very effective. Even in the second half, he got one of those to go on Mobley. But But yeah, like other than that, he came up huge when it.
I mean, he have 2 huge offensive rebounds in the fourth quarter. I think we cashed in on both of them.
Yeah,
He was
sorry, one other thing. It's funny because I went on this Kentucky pod before the series, and you probably remember this game when Michigan lost to
oh
Kentucky in
god.
the Elite Eight, and
Yeah. The
the
one time Julius Randle hit a huge shot in an elimination game.
well, so there's the Harrison twin who hit
Yeah.
that one over Karis LeVert, and I was like, oh yeah, and I was like, well, Julius Randle was on that Kentucky team, and it'll make up for it if Brunson can hit one like that over Karis LeVert. That last three, Karis LeVert's closing out that longest arms. Yeah, and Brunson hit it, so it's a little bit. That was cathartic for me.
It's just like, man, when the biggest things I took away from yesterday's game, the Mitch thing, I mean, he was fantastic. And Hartenstein, dude, that guy, the 180 his season has done is just something else.
I mean,
He's
it was
awesome.
definitely hurt early in the season. I
Yeah.
mean, that block he had on Okoro, like
oh,
the
God.
lift is there, like
Yeah. And he was just really good all around. And, again, to Tibbs's credit, like they midway through the fourth quarter, they kind of like they started running these pick and rolls to put Hartenstein in the action and get Allen closer to the rim, and they cashed in, I think, on like 2 straight shots, and he immediately put Mitch back in, and that ended right there. And it's like this is like that's kind of like the quick thinking on your feet that you need in a playoff series, and Tibbs was able to do that. But like, yeah, so I mean, the centers, 48 minutes of Mitch and Hartenstein right now is fucking awesome. And the other thing, I thought like Brunson did what Brunson does, but like you can see, like this is why RJ's season has been so frustrating, right? Because you're like, given everything else this team has going for it right now, if you just get your shit together, like it changes really like drastically, I think, what this team is capable of. And you see that these last 2 games, right? And it's not just the scoring, right? It's the defense. It's the fact that like he's just a fucking big dude. Like he's 6'6". Like he's a true wing on a team that really has like one other than him. I think Hart. Like I know Grimes is a wing, but Grimes is like he's not the same
he's
size.
like
He doesn't have the same.
6'5". Yeah, he's
Yeah.
strong and he could play up, but there's one thing I wanted to mention about RJ. I'll let you finish, but he had maybe the best pass of his career to quickly didn't make 3, but he set
Oh yeah, that
quickly
was a
open with
really
an
good
open
pass.
like it wasn't just that he
And
hit
it was
the
a nice
corner.
seal by Hartenstein on that too.
It was a nice seal, but he manipulated the defender with his eyes, right?
Yeah.
That is a very advanced play. His passing was just awesome. That's another thing on Hartenstein. Hartenstein was doing a really good job of walling off the closeouts. He got
Mhm.
called for an illegal screen actually late. I think
Yeah, that wasn't an illegal screen.
that was a horrible call, and RJ actually hit that 3.
Yeah.
But that's yeah. So that pass was just eye opening, and it shows that RJ really he has the potential to be this guy pretty consistently.
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest thing is I felt like the first 2 games, yeah, he was driving, but it felt like everything was like very finessey and he's trying to get cute. And like I know he made a few like he hit that fadeaway on the baseline yesterday. He had another he made a couple of mid-range shots that I'm sure like if I was a Cavs fan, I'd have been like, you got to be fucking kidding me. Like this guy hasn't made a mid-range shot all year and I was making 2. And then he made a floater at the end, but like his takes right now, the last 2 games, he's going to the rim stronger, and he's
Especially going right, like they're
yeah,
giving him the right, and he's okay. I'll take it.
yeah, he's just playing more decisively, but he's not. It's not just to your point. One of his issues, I know this was like a thing that a lot of draft aficionados felt about him coming into the league was like, yeah, he gets assists, but like a lot of it is predetermined decisions. And to your point, like what made that pass to quickly so impressive is like it wasn't predetermined. That was him, like you mentioned, manipulating the defense to create the shot for quick. And it's like he's just playing these last 2 games. It's like I don't know what happened. Maybe he ate his Wheaties or something, but like
He's like
the
Neo
way
when he realizes he's the
yeah,
one,
it's
and
like,
he just
oh, like I get it now. But yeah, like he's just it feels like he's playing under control while being aggressive. And he's just really, really working well right now. So I mean, I'm thrilled that he's these last 2 games especially has really allayed my concerns that I had coming into this series about how he'd perform. And man, if hopefully they can close this out on Wednesday in Game 5. But if he just plays at this level, it really changes. I think forgetting even whatever the ultimate outcome is of this series and then the Knicks playoff a run, but like it changes, I think, what your feelings are in terms of whatever you want to do this offseason to continue to, improve the team. Because like this is kind of why I just have never been particularly enamored with the idea of like trading him for an OG Anunoby, because a guy like OG Anunoby is just like, you see this in the playoffs, right? Like defenses automatically become better because teams are locked in. They're shortening rotations. You have very, very detailed and specific scouting reports. You see the same opponent over and over and over again. Like defenses naturally become better. And so to me, the value of like a basic 3-and-D guy, yeah, granted, OG Anunoby's defense is pretty awesome, but like he does nothing for you offensively. You need shot creation. Like shot creation is the premium skill in basketball, but especially in the postseason. And like I'm never have been interested in trading RJ for a guy who I feel is a limited shot creator. Like I know I had said like a few pods ago or whatever the fuck it was that like I would probably trade him for Jaden McDaniels, but that's because I think Jaden McDaniels is actually a capable shot creator in a capacity. And I think he's going to continue to grow. But like OG Anunoby, no, like fucking, these basic ass dudes that people talk about. Like I know Mikal Bridges is doing wonderful things in Brooklyn during their sweep. But like, I'm sorry, like a guy that just has to live in the mid range because he can't get to the rim and doesn't create a bunch of fucking free throws for himself and doesn't have the passing upside that RJ has. These guys just don't, they're not important to me. They're not guys that I think you should be considering trading RJ Barrett for. That to me is about you're valuing securing your floor over searching for higher upside and pushing your ceiling. And like ultimately, we'll see what happens with RJ in terms of like how his career progresses. But like there's still upside there. All-star, I don't know, but like it doesn't really matter. Like if you have a guy that can have games like this in the playoffs, that's really important, and you need to value those guys. Um, really, like they're the most valuable contributors you can possibly have, right? In when you're looking and talking about building a contender, is like, can you be a 20-point per game guy in the playoffs? Can we run offense through you and get you looks in a fourth quarter of a key game? And like, there's going to be more tests. Cleveland's obviously a fantastic defensive team, but there'll be, different teams challenge you in different ways. So if the Knicks win this series and they play fucking Milwaukee or something in round two, I think we'll see like, maybe he'll struggle initially and maybe he'll figure it out. And like, maybe that's just really what it was for him in the series, like struggle the first two games. And now he's kind of like ironed out what he needs to do, and he's doing it. And like, it's great to see. And, look, for all the people that have supported him this entire way and have, have been pushed back on criticism. Look, I stand by my criticism of him, but like, I'm happy for those people, especially because one of the best things is when you like keep faith in a player and then you get rewarded for it. And I'm sure that the RJ Hive is on cloud nine, and they should be. I mean, that's the best part about being a fan. So he's been awesome, and he deserves all the credit that he's getting today, and assuredly will get if the Knicks win this series.
Yeah, and like you said, it changed. That is what we've talked about, right? Like a wing like that, a star wing is what. And I don't even know if he has to be a star when you have a player who draws so much attention on offense like Jalen Brunson. But I'll say this, like
he has them so shook. Brunson has them so fucking shook right now. It's hilarious.
Yeah, he's shooting 28% from three for the series, and most like he's not even. This is not peak Brunson at all.
Yeah,
and some Cav tweeted, "Let's not act like Jalen Brunson has been good outside of this game. Then what the hell have Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland been on all series?"
it's amazing to me. Like the Knicks, like when the Knicks win or the Knicks are good, somehow, despite like even when they're good, actually none of their players are very good. Like Jalen Brunson's actually not that good. RJ Barrett's a scrub.
And
Mitchell
then people
Robinson.
will just fucking like Matt Moore. I know like a lot of people might have a problem with him. He follows me like I follow him whatever. Like he just like, well, the Knicks were worse by every metric in the regular season: offense, defense, net rating, record against good teams. Multiple of those things are false lies.
Yeah, the
They
Knicks
were the
have been
third
better
best
against playoff
offense.
teams
They've been
than
better
the
against
Cavs.
they've been better against above 500 teams. I didn't look up playoffs specifically, but I believe you there, including 3-1 against the Cavs.
Yeah.
They had the third best. Like we're just gonna leave that out. They had a much better offense than Cleveland, and you can and he responded. He was like, "Oh well, the offense hasn't been good this series." I would disagree. If you really like Cleveland's defense as much, I would say that the Knicks offense has been really good. They missed open threes, but besides game two, I think the Knicks have played well on offense. And yeah, they've showed that they're up for this, and they have depth, which nobody wants to quantify. But I'll tell you this too. People want to say, well, Jalen Brunson's not that good. If he was wearing a different jersey, like when you saw that yesterday, somebody quote tweeted Michael Pena, right? He gave like a C to the Knicks for signing Brunson. The year before, he was gushing about Brunson, right? Like this kid is special and all of that. So the uniform changes. Not say this, like if the Knicks were wearing a different uniform, and they're up 3-1 on this Cavs team that was the second best team in net rating all season, I think people would be talking much different. They are talking about this like it's a great story. They're still not a real contender. Maybe that's an accurate thing. I
But
will
like,
say
why
there
is
are
that the
other teams that get a
standard?
lot more hype.
And also, like, why is that the standard? The Knicks weren't supposed to be a contender this year. They're clearly punching above their weight. They were not the Cavs were the favorite coming into this series. And like we all as Knicks fans were like, I thought this was the best matchup for the Knicks. And it's funny, like what I said before the series was like, if Randle is healthy, I like the Knicks in 6. And if Randle's not healthy, I think they lose in 6. Funny enough, he's been healthy, and I think apparently I wish he wasn't healthy or something. Like, I don't know what's going on with him, but he's not even been good. And the Knicks they're up 3-1. Like, they clearly are a better team than people want to give them credit for. And if the criticism and like the pushback on it is like, well, you're not a contender, and why are you so happy? Oh, the Knicks are. Oh, you guys, maybe you're going to win a first round series. Congratulations! Like, what are we supposed to do? Be fucking miserable about it? No, this season, look, this team is fun. The Knicks have a bunch of young guys that they've drafted, that they've developed, that they've kept, that they've been patient with through ups and downs. R.J. Barrett this season, we've talked about it. Mitchell Robinson last year was a huge up and down thing for him, and he's bounced back and he's been incredible this year. Even like guys
Hartenstein
like
started the season awful.
yeah, Julius Randle, right? Like he had a disaster season last year. He was really fucking good this year. Emmanuel Quickly, really poor start to last season and a poor shooting start to this season. And he's bounced back each time and closed season strong. And hopefully he gets going offensively. Jalen Brunson, obviously, he's just been a rock for the Knicks since day one. But like at Grimes, right? Grimes had shooting struggles in this season, middle of the season, whatever, and he's bounced back. Like they've really taken their time and they've been patient with guys and they're getting rewarded for it now. And it's like,
And I think that to that point also, I think mental toughness is a hallmark for this team. They've won 2 of these games by win in the fourth quarter in games that were close. They blew the game open in game 3. This is mentally a very tough team. And it's one reason why, RJ Barrett he's been prepping for this his whole life. Steve Nash's godson, dad was a pro player. That is one reason they've liked him and why a lot of people still believe in him is that he has the mental makeup to get through this, even if they have these kind of struggles. And that's really everyone on this team. And I don't think that's a coincidence at all. And I think Thibs loves that about them and has probably influenced that too.
yeah, I mean, we've seen it all year, right? Like that Dallas game that they lost. I remember after that game for like 2 days, I was like, this is the worst experience of my life. And like they bounce back from that. They come like they won 8 in a row and then they lose 5 in a row and they bounce back from that. Like they they had that stretch at the end of the season, right, where they lose to Minnesota and when they lost to
The Torian
Sacramento.
Prince game.
Yeah, and they lose to Sacramento and then you lose to the Clippers. Like they've bounced back. They find ways to win games and it's like every time that they've hit a little bump in the road, they found a way to get better. And it speaks to like again everything with the organization in terms of like the front office, the coaching staff, the players. I mean, we heard about this.
Thibs too. Thibs is
Yeah,
definitely
100%. Thibs deserves a ton of credit. And like we heard about this all off season, right? Like, oh, they're not aligned. There's no vision. They're not aligned. I don't think you could argue that they're not aligned anymore at all. Like this is as aligned as you could possibly be, and maybe that had to come with like, it really does feel like that. And we talked about this at the meetup. I don't know if you were there by that time, but like when they started off the year 10-13 and it felt like there was a little give and take on both ends, right? It was like, okay, the front office takes the L on the Cam Reddish thing and Tibbs has to not play his favorite son in Derrick Rose and put Evan Fournier in the bench. And, he's got to play quickly more. He's got to play Deuce in the rotation. Grimes has to start. Like, it feels like there really was some kind of like conversation internally, and they came to some hard decisions, and those decisions have paid off, and they deserve a ton of credit for that, because I'll tell you what, at 10-13, with how Donovan Mitchell started the season, and obviously the fact that Knicks did not get him, there were people that were, I think they were very much in a precarious spot potentially, and they were going to get a lot of criticism. So again, like, I'm not counting the Cavs out here, because Donovan Mitchell is capable of just going nuclear for a few games. We saw that in the bubble for sure. We've seen that in a multiple playoff series with him.
But at
But
this
like,
point, if the Knicks lose this series in 7, nobody's going to call it a failure. It'll be
yeah,
disappointing. There'll probably
yeah,
be some criticism that comes to Tibbs, but yeah,
it,
world of a
it's
difference from where they were
yeah,
before earlier this
yeah,
season.
and to me, the season is already it is a success. There's no there's nothing that can happen, honestly, to me, to make the season not a success. They've basically been rewarded. I mean, I've talked about this before, but like, every major decision, you can go back to it in the offseason, they've come out trumps on. Like, they did all this shit to get Jalen Brunson, to clear the space for Jalen Brunson and Isaiah Hartenstein. Both those have looked like genius moves. They kept Randle, that paid off. They kept Thibs, that paid off. They paid Mitchell Robinson, that paid off. They extended RJ Barrett. And for a long time, I was like, I'm not sure if this is a hit or not, but we'll see. These last 2 games, you have to feel very good about what you're seeing from him at a key point in the season. That looks like it's about to pay off. Retaining Emmanuel quickly paid off. Like, all of these big decisions that they ultimately made have paid off, and they're being rewarded for it. I mean, I wouldn't say trading for Josh Hart was a huge decision, but like, even if you look at the way they did it, right? They used their own pick and lottery protected it over giving up the Dallas pick. And who would have expected that Dallas would suck so much ass that they might not get that pick anyway? But like, they were willing to risk their own pick versus like, basically they bet on, we're going to be so good after this trade that it won't matter. And they've been rewarded for that. Josh Hart's been incredible. Like, they have hit on so many big decisions in the last year. And I really believe this. If Leon Rose, if this same exact team, same exact decision tree, same exact outcome had played out, but they were playing in Memphis, he would be getting executive of the year. He would be in the executive of the year conversation. He might be the fucking front runner for executive of the year. He deserves to be the executive of the year. He's had to make bigger decisions and has hit on almost all of them more than any other executive in the NBA. And I know people have talked about like Monty McNair, and I think he's done a great job in Sacramento, so don't get me wrong. But like, yeah, you can put keeping or hiring Mike Brown as one of the best moves any team made last offseason. I think that's unequivocally true. He's been fantastic for them. But like, the Sabonis move was made last year. Like, Keegan Murray, I love Keegan Murray, by the way, but like, I mean, he was the 4th overall pick. So it's not like, and he wasn't, I mean, I guess people would be like, well, they could have taken Ivy, whatever. I just think the Knicks have done a lot more, and they're in a more competitive conference. They're in a tougher conference. They play in the toughest division in basketball. That's no question. There's no question about that. You got Boston, Philly, New York, Brooklyn, who at least for half the season was a contender. And then Toronto, who isn't great, but they're not like some garbage ass team, right? It's the toughest division in basketball. And they have come out of all of that with a team that most people that weren't Knicks fans weren't particularly high on. And I wasn't super high on them, mostly because I didn't trust Thibs. But all of it has paid off. And that is a credit to Leon Rose and the job that he's done as the lead executive of this team. And he's put this team in a position it hasn't been in since I don't even fucking know when, since like 99. I mean, if they win this series, to me, this is no doubt about it, the best Knicks season since 99. It is. It just is. And the difference between this and 2013 is this team isn't done. Like, they're not, there's a bunch of guys that can still get better. I mean, quickly, Obi, RJ, Deuce, Grimes, all those guys can get better. Hartenstein can get better. He's only 24. Mitch can get better. He's only 25. Like,
Brunson will probably get better.
Yeah, Brunson's not even in his prime years yet, right? Like, prime years technically is usually 27 to 31. He's 26. Randle, we'll see. Like, but he was spectacular this season. There's no reason, as we talked about, his shot chart is so much better now. There's no reason to not think, at least in the regular season, that he can deliver those type of performances again. So this team is in a fantastic position. And again, like I just, as somebody who did not want to do the Mitchell trade, I love how this team has developed, and I love that it feels like you feel a real connection with the team because, I mean, I tweeted this morning, but like 5 of the guys in the rotation last night were drafted and developed by this team. And a sixth guy, Grimes, didn't play last night because he was out injured. And then you add Brunson, who feels like he may as well have been a Knick for the last 30 fucking years or something. And you get like, Randle, whatever you want to say about him, he's been here now. What is this, his 4th year with the team? Like he's been through a lot with the organization, ups and downs. Like you add a guy like Hart, who feels like he literally was born to be a Knick. Hartenstein, he's just a really solid fucking player, and he's just such a great chemistry guy. Like you really feel like there's a connection between the fan base and this team. And I don't think it to me, it never, not that like obviously fans embraced Carmelo Anthony when he was here, but it never felt like the connection with the team was the same as it was like, those 90s teams, you really connected with them because it felt like you had been with those guys forever. They came up with the organization, so many of them. And there was just a real bond there. Like, I feel that way about this team, where I feel like there's a bond there. And like, I like, again, like part of the reason why I have been so critical of RJ Barrett is because I do fucking care. Like, I want him to be good. You know what I mean? There's a lot of like investment, I think, for the fan base emotionally with the guys on this roster. And I think that matters. And I don't think we would feel that way if they made the Mitchell trade. I mean, they might be just as good. Maybe they're better. I don't know. But like, I wouldn't feel the way I feel about this team if they had made that trade, because it is kind of like a soulless corporate mindset of like, well, when you get this, like, just, risk it all for stars. And that's like kind of like
it's also not effective necessarily
yeah.
anymore. We've talked a lot about this, but the super team thing hasn't worked for anyone. I mean, it still feels like you probably want to draft. The lesson might be for you want to draft that kind of a guy. But the more I think about it, like, why can't Julius or Jalen Brunson be be your best offensive player? Why? I think we've had
And look,
Schmuck on
if
it.
the Knicks win this series, we need to really think about, like, is is Brunson better than Mitchell? Like, I don't really understand how the argument isn't in favor of him if the Knicks win this series.
Yeah, I mean, I think in turn, like, head to head can be a little. I think Mitchell has a little bit wider of a bag. He can get to his shots a little bit better against a wider variety of defenders. But one on one, you can see who owns who, right? Like, even when Mitchell plays good defense, you can just see Brunson's eyes light up when he gets that switch, which is not a great look. I still think, I mean, Mitchell can get to, like, he can take 9, 10 pull ups in a game, like that matters. He's trying to figure out how to get some of the other Cavs involved. But if the Cavs did have a fifth guy, or a little bit more support around him, like if you had Mitchell on this team in place of Brunson, I think he'd have a much better series. So I'm not willing to go there yet, but I absolutely think Brunson is in that like, we talk about certain guards, we talk about De'Aaron Fox, John Morant, all these, like, why shouldn't Brunson be in that category besides the fact that he doesn't throw down crazy dunks and like, it's he can get to a spot wherever he wants. Very efficient player, can score all over the floor. He's a good enough passer, doesn't turn the ball over. Makes up for being limited on ball as a defender by, he had a big steal and that led to a dunk with an outlet early in the first half. He adds, like, he mitigates how much value he gives back on the defensive end. Why shouldn't he be talked about as an elite point guard?
I Your guess is as good as mine, because
He's only done it for 1 year, I guess. Maybe you can say that at this level, but that's really it.
But it's like, it's also the first time he had the opportunity, and all we heard, right, was like, well, he's going to be good, but it's not the same spacing in New York as it was in Dallas. He's going to be the focus. He's like, and look,
There were still people who were like, well, he looked good next to Luka. His best games came when Luka was not
right.
in,
Yeah, and I mean, there were people that were like, oh, like, why not go for Colin Sexton? Like, I'm like, I don't know, because Brunson's much better. Like, I never really got that. But like, Yeah, he was. I mean, he's been great, and he deserves to be. He deserves more credit than I think he's even getting. Like, I don't care about most improved, but like he's absolutely one of the elite cards in the league. And like I think Darius Garland's a hell of a player, and I think he's going to be a really good player for a long time. But in 2023, give me Jalen fucking Brunson over Darius Garland every fucking day. Like I don't even think that's like I think that's an absurd conversation. That like no, like
There's people who are
what?
putting Halliburton above
Yeah,
Jalen
no.
Brunson.
When Halliburton can like make a playing game, we can have that conversation. But like Brunson's just flat out better than those guys, and the biggest thing is like I mentioned with RJ, he has proven he's proven himself in the playoffs. Jalen Brunson performs in the playoffs. He can adapt, and he's such a skilled shot maker at every single level now. I mean, the 3-point shooting with him, his improvement there this year has been fantastic. But like his the level he's been at, I mean, he's been tremendous, but he can make shots. He like you can't take away everything because he has so many counters. And like all that, oh, Isaac Okoro is gonna lock him up shit. Yeah, that fucking shit ended real quick.
And that passing shit, I promise you, it comes real easy to a hooper like this.
It does. But yeah, I think that he's been awesome. And so um I you're right. Like how many guards really are better than him?
I mean, in the
Not many.
East, there's dude, they have been such a fucking disaster. I'm not even. People will hear this and maybe one day it'll look crazy that I said this. This season isn't better than Trey Young. I
Oh
don't
yeah.
think that's overall. Like, yeah, Trey Young got the All Star nod, had better stats, but in terms of winning, impacting winning, I mean, that was even before the season. I had Atlanta over us. Because I thought Murray and Trey Young was a great combo. Right now, we're just going to revise that history and say it actually wasn't. Um,
Well, I didn't. I like the Knicks over
yeah, you
Atlanta.
were right about that. I'll give
Yeah.
you credit for that. Um, but how many guards are better than him in the East? Kyrie's gone. If you want to say Trey, fine, but I don't think it's a ridiculous conversation.
Trey isn't better than him. That's a joke. No.
And then who else is there even? I mean,
Like Drew is a fantastic defensive
yeah.
player, but offensively, like dude, that guy puts up some of the most insane shitty shooting numbers in the
And
playoffs.
by the way, guess who dropped 44 on Drew Holiday?
Yeah,
That will
he
be a
cooked
fun
him.
matchup.
Yeah, it would be a great matchup. But like I honestly I think it's not ridiculous to take him over Drew. I don't think so. Um
There's
le-
no one on Boston.
yeah, Boston like they're good, like Smart and Derek White and those guys are good play Brogdon, like they're good players, but they're not Brunson.
Yeah, and I would probably still take Mitchell over Brunson, but I think it's like to your point, it's damn close. I think Mitchell again, like against a little bit stronger, so like bigger wings and stuff, he probably gives you a little bit more. He has a little bit of a higher upside on defense, and like I think Brunson is a year away from maybe being able to get to that level of volume from three, but like that is just an insane skill, and there's a reason why both of us still think that like Mitchell could just take this series over. But it's really like Mitchell is the only guy I'd probably take over Brunson, like without a doubt. And then I think you have cases for Drew and Trey, and that's really it. I'm not putting Halliburton over him. Um, and the thing is like what makes this palatable if he is the best player is that he's making a descending contract, by the way, but he's making 25 on average a year. So that is in no way something that prevents you from making more moves to improve the roster. And if you really want to, yeah, maybe you look at things like moving Randle. I think that's a little bit of an overreaction based on one playoff series. But to your point,
It's
like you
two.
do what it's
It's
two,
two
but
playoff
like
series.
this, I wouldn't write this one off for many of the reasons that you suggested.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think he's at close to 100%. Or like he doesn't have his rhythm. This conditioning isn't there.
Yeah,
Um,
like I said, I know that I have like a theory, right? Like my hypothesis. And so like using what has occurred in this series, like again, like whenever the season ends, I really probably need to like take a week before I, decide like what not that it fucking matters to the Knicks, but like what I think they should do with Randall. But like because you need to kind of like look at everything as a whole, right? And so I agree. Like even if I end up feeling that they should trade Randall, like it's too early to decide
yeah,
that one way or the other, you know?
and I think it'd be unlikely even if they just, I don't think they would like if they got like a 3 unprotected pick package, they might have to consider that strongly. I still don't think like if they were gonna move Randall, it'd probably be to upgrade or like to get a better fit next to Brunson, right? I don't think they would just do it for picks or to get younger or something. But I also like on that note, also like Obi Toppin was terrific. I was just watching this the clip of like the last Brunson shot, and you can see Obi just sprinting baseline to baseline the whole time, or sideline to sideline the whole time, trying to get the rebound, calling for the bucket, crashing the glass again. His activity is awesome. I still don't know if I buy Obi Toppin as a 30 to 35 minute like starting power forward in this league,
You don't
just
think he
because
knows who he is at the elbow?
no, it's not about like the defense just worries me. Still, I thought he was terrific on defense,
I
but
love.
like
I he was. I like his minutes yesterday. I mean, and it was actually really nice. Forgetting like us, who kind of like have always liked Obi, right? Especially once he was on the Knicks. You know, it's hard not to fucking root for the guy. Like he's just such a fun player, and his heart is like so clearly in the right place. But it was really nice to hear Van Gundy give him praise on the broadcast. Like he was like he's not just playing well today. He's played well the entire series, and I 100% agree with that. I think Obi has really come out like and to the point like when we talk about the concerns about Randall, can he translate his play to the playoffs? Apparently, Obi's better in the playoffs than he is in the regular season. So,
well, and I think this
yeah,
team, to your point, Mobley isn't this. It's not Giannis, right? So that is a little bit of what concerns me is that can Obi really be your main guy at power forward? Like if the Knicks did trade Randall, I'd probably want them to get someone who could at least split time with Obi and complement him with those matchups. I don't know if this is the guy, but someone in that Dario Saric mold. Maybe it's a guy I wanted a couple seasons ago. Um, so I think that is another thing where like I'm not convinced there just because of the defense right now. And like he's a little bit top heavy. Like I think he's done a good job in the weight room and all of that, but there's just a ceiling to that. Um, but um, but yeah, I mean to your point, it's awesome to see like that play with Mitchell. I was like, move it, move it, move it. Oh shit, he got by, finishes over Allen. Just and like yeah, like how could you not love the dude? Like he plays his ass off all the time. I think even the the staunchest Julius Randle defenders, and remember like for everyone who's taking the victory app on RJ, this is what a lot of people on the Julius train did. I don't think even they like ever dislike like it's tough to just hate a guy who's playing 100% balls to the wall. Like he never takes a possession off. So
yeah. It's just like honestly, it's just so nice to have all these dudes contribute and get a little bit of credit. Like I know, like again, we talked about quickly, like he didn't even have a good offensive game, but even on the broadcast, Van Gundy was like, I think his defense has been fucking awesome. Like basically the entire series. He didn't say fucking awesome actually. But he gave him credit, right? He's obviously Brunson's deserves all the credit he's getting. RJ deserve like maybe more than anybody, given kind of how much criticism he had from the fan base, myself included. He like it's awesome for him to get these moments, right? Mitchell Robinson, who I think is proving now not just that the Knicks were right to keep him, but like where does he rank in the NBA hierarchy of centers? I think that's a real conversation to be had because
playing Jared Allen for a series
yeah,
is gonna open
and
some eyes.
yeah,
It should.
and you're not just seeing like not only is he outplaying Jared Allen, but you're seeing like we kind of like joke right about Thibs is like his 48 minutes of rim protection. He's so fucking obsessed with it, but you're seeing how valuable that is in the playoffs, right?
That also, by the way, has played a part in Mitchell.
Yeah,
Like we talked about this with Garland, right? Like Garland played really well defensively in game two, but a big part of that was you were bringing Jared Allen over, and that was causing problems. Mitchell Robinson has absolutely had that effect. He blocked a 3-pointer for Mitchell last game. I think that like even if Mitchell beats his guy, Hartenstein or Robinson is waiting for him there, and they have the length and the athleticism to really bug that. And so and for a guy who's like especially last year, we're talking about does he have the ability to be like that guy in pick and roll defense anymore and drop his drop coverage on Mitchell especially has been impeccable all series long.
yeah, and he's just I'm honestly the way he's bounced back from he was really good defensively throughout. He's been good defensively this entire season, but especially the first two games, but offensively he was kind of a little sloppy. He's really recovered these last two games and played very well on that end actually. And he like again, like I don't know. Like when you're talking about centers now in the league, I mean, how many guys you really taken over Mitchell Robinson? I don't think there are many aside from like you got your star centers, right?
Jokic and
Embiid and
Embiid.
Jokic and those guys. But like, I mean, I think you can make a pretty reasonable argument that in terms of
Are you
playoff
Robert?
basketball, like Mitchell Robinson is a more valuable commodity than somebody like Karl Anthony Towns. I think that's not like an insane argument to make.
Sorry, I know you hate Cat. I still wouldn't go that far. I do think. I'm sorry. Every time he gets the ball under the hoop and it doesn't go in, but he's going to the free throw line, I'm just like, it's still a thing. I'm sorry, that matters. But at one, Karl Anthony Towns doesn't play center, so. But like, is Mitchell Robinson that much worse than a guy like Rudy Gobert right now? I mean,
He's better
Rudy
than
was
Rudy
awesome.
Gobert.
Rudy was awesome yesterday, and I think he still has that. But like there are Boston fans who probably still think that Robert Williams just is on a completely different level from Mitchell Robinson. I don't think that's true. I think I might take Mitchell Robinson over Robert Williams. He gives you more on offense. Williams does, but I mean, we've talked about this too, and I think me and you have argued about this. Like, you can say, whatever is it, 4 or 5 offensive rebounds a game Mitchell Robinson gets. It's just a few possessions. That's not changing the game. But with that last Josh Hart rebound, right? I think DJ might have clipped it or someone clipped it, and Prez made the comment that like, yeah, like they're occupied by Mitch. That's partly what opens up things for Hart. Partly what opens up the floater game for these guys is that Mitchell Robinson draws so much attention. So it's many more possessions than that he's affecting. I know that you kind of haven't always agreed with that, but I do think that's been a thing in this series. And yeah, I mean, like I think he's in a group of centers after that top two. And maybe I'd probably put Bam as like number 3 in his own category. But I mean, yeah, like I'm not so sure a guy like DeAndre in is that much better than Mitch. A little bit more versatile offensively, but the force on defense, like I think he's in a group with those guys, or certainly has looked like it this series. I am a little bit worried about coming in, like I thought Milwaukee, part of what made Milwaukee such a tough matchup is just stretch fives always cause issues for us. That's Boston's best lineups against us usually involve Mitch having to go out and guard Horford. And that's not all on Mitch, by the way. I don't think he's just a bad perimeter defender. I think it's also because they need him in the paint and he really has to weigh those, and Thibs' scheme asks him to do a lot. But I'll also say that the way he adapted, I think Mitchell hit like 1 or 2 in drop coverage on Robinson in game one. He adapted extremely well. Garland got going and hit a couple of jumpers where I wish Mitchell had played a little bit more aggressively, but Brunson was just dying on every screen, so I can't fault him. So his adjustments, I think, in playing closer level, like knowing how much space to give to these elite pull-up shooters, I wonder if that means that he can adjust to having to guard someone like Brook Lopez while still being able to help in the paint, right? It'll be fascinating. Again, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, and we don't want to write off Miami either. But well, I do want to write off Miami. But the point is, why wouldn't after? I think there's 3 that I would probably say. I don't consider Karl Anthony Towns a center right now. I would put Bam and the 2 MVP candidates over Mitch, and then after that, I think he's in a group with the rest of them. He's outplayed a guy who people will put as high as 3 or 4, right? I'm sure there's Cavs fans who think Jared Allen is better than Bam. Mitch has outplayed him thoroughly.
Yeah, Mitch is. I mean, he's totally won that matchup. There's no question about it. And as Kobe once said, "Job's not finished." But I think the Knicks they look primed to do it. They've been really good, and I get like we haven't talked about this all. We need to talk about it. Game 3 was fucking great. It was really, really fun to watch Darius Garland piss his pants. And at Madison Square Garden, it was really satisfying to watch Donovan Mitchell have a fucking like mental breakdown in a huddle at the end of the game, towards the end of the game, and like start screaming at his teammates. And then it was just
The Zach Novak aneurysm of leadership.
yeah, and it's funny because Zach Novak actually made some threes and helped the Michigan win a Big Ten title. Donovan Mitchell pissed himself yesterday in the biggest game of the season. So maybe the real takeaway here is Zach Novak is clear.
Do you know who Donovan Mitchell lost to in his last college game? I will save that trivia, but I think you guys can guess who I'm talking about. Yeah, I mean, game 3. I was at game 3. I've been to I've been to 2 playoff games in the COVID year. That was a pretty incredible environment. I think I've talked about it, how Obi Toppin had the alley oop midway through the second half, and that was the first time I really think I felt the floor shake at MSG, and they won that game two. The second game on to game five, but the atmosphere with a full crowd was on a completely different level. And it was just I didn't have a voice the next day, and I just think that yeah, I mean, it was a hell of a night, and I think that for what it's worth, people had talked about this coming into the series. Stars have big games in MSG. It's been a point of frustration for us all season. Not just stars. It seems like people just come in and turn into completely different players. And the stage seemed to be set, right? You have Donovan Mitchell coming back home, where he grew up, to play in front of the team he grew up a fan of. The team he was rumored for. Garland had coming off game two, played really well. And the Knicks, people had talked about it. That there's an article written in I think it was Cleveland.com about how the Cavs had a 23-18 record. I'm sorry, the Knicks had a 23-18 home record, which isn't stellar. But it's a winning record, which is better than what the Cavs did on the road. But there was question, how much can MSG really rattle opponents? And I think certainly in game three, they shook, because ain't no such thing as halfway crooks.
Well,
And it was just
the funny thing was on the broadcast yesterday, like Van Gundy went on this, like, he was like so persistent about, he's like, I didn't think the Cavs were shook. I just think but then he was like, I thought they were frenetic and lacked poise. And I'm like, so they were shook? Like, I don't really understand what you're saying here.
Yeah, it's I mean, it was loud, man. Like I didn't have my voice the next day. Really fun environment.
Well, even yesterday, it's impressive because it's a matinee game. So let's just say the crowd might not be as well oiled as they were on a Friday night. But like
the 8:30 start helped because it gave everyone an extra hour to engage in whatever pregame rituals they thought would get them riled up. So.
But like, if you watch like yesterday during that fourth quarter, we talked about that play where RJ hit the three and they called the foul on Hartenstein or whatever it was, or there's travel on Hart, right? Breen didn't hear the whistle. Like, he was like convinced that three counted, and he was going on about it for like 2 seconds. And he's like, I actually couldn't hear the whistle. I didn't realize like they had called a travel. So the crowd yesterday and Friday night, like, forget what the fuck, did they rattle the Cavs or not? They definitely lifted the Knicks. Like, they lifted the team in a lot of ways. And I can't imagine what it was like being there at game three, but like, for anybody that went to those games or went to one of the games or whatever it was, I'm sure that was an amazing experience, because on TV you could feel the energy too. So yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, and it had everything. There, people still do fuck Trae Young chants. I think it's more at this point like a galvanizing cry than anything about Trae Young. But definitely a lot of fun. You hopped off just when I had actually a trivia question for you. Do you know what happened in Donovan Mitchell's last game in college?
Yes. Oh wait, sorry. What was the question?
What happened in Donovan Mitchell's last game in college?
Trying to think. Did he get gamed by Nick Stauskas?
Not Stauskas, Moritz Wagner.
Oh,
but yeah,
right,
it was Sweet 16 in Michigan. Or no, I think it was the round of 32, but Louisville was like the title favorite.
Because we played that, what was it?
Oregon.
I forgot who we played. We played Oregon round one?
No, in round one it was Oklahoma State. That was a fun game.
Yeah, that was Juwan Evans, who I thought was going to be like awesome.
Yeah, it was Juwan Evans against Derek Walton, like two 5'10" guys just going for 30. But yeah, Donovan Mitchell's ended his career by losing to Mo Wagner and the Michigan Wolverines. But yeah, I highly recommend it. I was very fortunate to be able to go to game three, and anyone who has a chance, tickets are insane. So, that was not an option for me. I like I said, I was very fortunate. But if you have the ability to do so, it's a very unique experience.
I mean, and if you can't, look, those tickets are very expensive. So if you can't, make that happen, it's totally understandable. But if you want to get a nice playoff experience for a cheap price, check out Brooklyn Nets tickets. Here they're readily
I'm still getting
available.
those texts from NYC basketball. And then they haven't even. The thing is, we have New York playoff tickets or something like that. So like they don't specify that it's the Nets, but I was like, buddy, you don't have Knicks tickets, so I know what you're talking about.
The Knicks don't need NYC basketball to help them sell their tickets out. But like, yeah, I mean, look, it was, you know what? This is such a great weekend in so many ways. It was very satisfying, obviously, for the Knicks to go 2-0 at home. It was even more satisfying to have it sandwiched, to have a nice little Brooklyn Nets sweep sandwiched in between, because look, the Knicks, for all the accusations of like, oh, the Knicks just, they're star hungry, they're always trying to get a star. The franchise that has actually done that is the Nets, and it has not worked out for them twice. And people can sit and talk, oh, well, they got such a great package from Phoenix for Kevin Durant. Mikal Bridges is a budding superstar. There is a budding superstar in New York. He just happens to play for the Knicks, and he runs point guard for them. The Nets don't have shit. Yes, Deuce McBride. The Nets don't have shit. They are a fucking clown show and organization. They got gamed by fucking Paul Reed on Saturday, which was pretty nice.
Paul Reed's good.
Paul Reed's good, but Joel Embiid wasn't playing. Like, give me a fucking break. You can't win that game, then just shut the fuck up. They can't score. They can't win a game when Embiid is out and James Harden is shooting 7% from the field, or where the fuck he's shooting. It was glorious. It was a very, very nice weekend, and it was a reminder that the Nets can do whatever they want. They will never matter in this city, and they will never matter at all, really. So, kudos to all the fucking weirdo people that were like jumped off a cliff in 2019 when they signed KD and Kyrie, and I'm done with the Knicks. Yeah, I'm done with the Knicks and all this shit. And shout out to Andrew Yang. Yeah, Andrew Yang, Michael Rappaport, Crazy Kristen, and the rest of the people that jumped ship at the worst possible time. It just took a little time to see it. But the Knicks have built this team in a way that's like, again, like it really, if it said like Memphis on the front of their jerseys, I think people would be talking about how cool it is the way that they've built this team without tanking for years and all this shit. But they won't get that credit, and that's fine. I don't need it, because this team is fucking awesome to root for. And that game on Friday was something else. Yes, the Cavs miss open threes, but like you score 79 points, and they basically, like, 9 of those points I think came basically when the Knicks had waved the white flag and brought Derrick Rose out. Like that was a absolute defensive masterclass. And this entire weekend, I think, the Knicks defense has been fucking awesome on a team level. They've just been really, really locked in. And I think the biggest thing
before Game 3, there were people actually saying we might need Rose's experience out there, and they were right. He got minutes in Game 3.
That's what helped us.
And at the end of the game, in the fourth quarter, they had Derrick Rose on the floor, so those people got their wish.
But like, it's just really, like when you kind of see, I think the biggest credit to Thibs I can give is like one of the biggest issues I had during that first round series against Atlanta was just like it felt like there was a unwillingness to adapt and change tactics, and it felt like the game plan was not very opponent specific on either end of the floor. And this team this year is so much more locked in not just their focus, but they're like, you can tell they know the fucking scouting report, that they know the game plan, they're executing the game plan, who to help off of, who not to help off of.
String.
Yeah, they're so locked in. And like, yes, there are certain guys who are doing more of the work on that end than others, but everybody, aside from whatever the hell Julius was doing yesterday, everybody is competing on that end, and everybody's giving a genuine effort. And they're, again, like you said, like they're on a string. They are locked in. And Thibs deserves a lot of credit for that, because I think it's a strong improvement from what we saw last time in his playoffs. And to his to part of it is like, last time he didn't have the talent that he has at his disposal now. And like, we talked about this, right, with Reggie Bullock, where we're like, this guy can't make he can't make Trae Young pay. This is awful. Is the Knicks offense that's something of beauty right now? No, but you're also playing an elite defense. What are they? They were the number one defense in the league, right?
Yes.
So like it's going to be somewhat of a
Like you
struggle.
said before the series, that the efficiency, you throw that out the
Yeah,
window.
yeah. I
And
don't
I
care
think the
about it.
process has been largely good. They've generated good shots. Besides game two, really, they haven't really just shit the bed on offense. The way the Cavs can do to teams, as we saw. They've mostly been the process has been good. They're generating good shots. It's just it's a good defense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been awesome. I don't even know. Like I'm sure that if there's the only thing I think that Knicks fans are truly worried about right now is whether or not we will have the 11th pick in the draft or no pick at all.
I am. Well, imagine if they get Wembanyama, dude. That would be fucking. That would be
How could they ruin him? It'll be interesting, but I'm sure that Mark Cuban will find a way.
God. But the yeah, like I think I am now looking ahead. Maybe is it too early to look ahead a little bit because you know uh
Job's not finished.
job's not finished. But you get past this, there is a non-zero chance that Miami, a team the Knicks have played well all season, who I think they're better than, will be there. You if they play the Knicks have played the Bucks tough too. Even though I hate that matchup, and I would expect the Knicks to lose. But the way they're playing right now, if you get this RJ Barrett, it's a game changer, like you said. You get everyone playing this well, and if Randle wakes up, I think that like here's the thing, and this is why people are like the Knicks aren't a true contender. I think it's worth. I'll say this much. I think I've said it before, and like these last two games have done nothing to dissuade me. I do not ultimately think the Knicks are one of the two or three best teams in the league. But there's no one I really am like. It's not like the LeBron Heat where I was like, they are inevitable, right? Like I think the Bucks are better. They have a superstar of their own. There's no one I'm like we don't have a chance against. Like if we really play above our head, I think they have a chance against anyone. And like, why wouldn't you start talking about, like, people are talking about the Kings, people are talking about lower seeds in the West, people were talking about the Cavs being a dark horse. Why wouldn't you start talking about the Knicks as like going all the way? Like, I don't think it's a crazy notion at this point. I think it's unlikely, but not crazy.
I mean, look, if Milwaukee wins, that's just the one team in this. I mean, honestly, this is kind of crazy to say. It's basically like the one team in the entire league. I just think the Knicks have. It's very hard for me to see them winning that series, assuming Giannis is healthy.
I mean, if Mitch
But
is playing like this, I'm not even scared of the Nuggets. Like,
no, I'm not scared. The West is a joke. No team in the West scares me.
well, because
That
he
entire
kills us usually. That's the
yeah,
Jokic does.
yeah. But Mitch did well against him last time they played, so we're
Yeah.
good. Mitch is he's elevating his game. I mean, he really might be taking a leap right now. Like I know, like he's always been a good rim protector, and the numbers have always borne out that the Knicks defense is better with him on the floor than off. But like
But
again,
something you had mentioned is that he doesn't always play well against elite bigs. He's starting to do
yeah,
that too. So
yeah, and he's not just against elite bigs, but like Jared Allen's a good center. To be thoroughly outplaying him is a big deal. Like that's not insignificant. That's very, very much a big deal. And like it's so weird because like he's always kind of uh there are these weird centers that he's always struggled against. Like Jakob Pertl for some reason always gives him a really hard time. But like
Embiid usually gives him a hard time.
yeah,
And
but I mean Embiid is Embiid is his own thing. But yeah, like to see him just dominate this matchup is so awesome. And like I think again, like that's just the best part about this team is it's these guys that like, like back in like 2018, we were like, man, Mitch, like people don't like, well, if he gets his shit together, he could be so good. And it's like, around like fans of other teams and talking heads and all these people are like, they're like, what are you fucking talking about? Like the Knicks don't have talent. The Knicks don't have this. And to see some of these guys like, Mitch come good in the playoffs, Obi have his moments, RJ have his moments, Brunson, like all these different dudes, just awesome. It's really, really awesome. It's really, really satisfying as a fan. And I'm very happy for all of those players individually and obviously for the team. And, I'm just happy about it all. It's fucking great.
yeah, and I mean, I think that's another thing. You gotta. Someone was talking about this. I think the last pod I did with Matt Miranda, he's talking about this, that like this is kind of people said this about the 2020-21 season, but this is still a season where the expectations weren't great, and so everything is just it's a everything is a pleasant surprise, right? To see this, and this realistically will be the last season for these Knicks where that is the case, because the expectations are going to start whenever the offseason begins. Um, and one going forward, you hope that we keep that in mind. If and when they have their setbacks, if and when they can't get over that hump, assuming they continue to progress. But like we saw, like the Bulls had the greatest player of all time. How many years it took them to get over the hump? I mean, I know that if I had been a Bulls fan, when just watching them lose the Pistons, especially the second year, or the last year before they won it, when Pippen has the migraine in Game 7, those kind of things. But it's that much worse when you have expectations, and when you get to the Eastern Conference Finals every year, like in the '90s, and you expect it, you don't get to enjoy it as much. So that's the other thing. Like that's what you have to remind yourself. I'm not great at this. I was really mad after Game 2. I don't think I had, but like you have to remember, like you got to enjoy the ride, like because this is probably the last year for the Knicks where there won't be expectations, and we can really just enjoy them beating the shit out of Cleveland.
Yeah, like it's like them getting an automatic playoff berth, and just obviously the development we saw from a lot of the young guys and all that shit had already made the season a success to me. So this is all like gravy at this point. But man,
Well, I also wanted to, like, I think that you would also
I
say,
wanted this to be a competitive
like,
series.
if it was a gentleman's sweep, we lost. If
Yeah.
it was the Hawks series again, that would have
Yeah.
been concerning. It won't be. I mean, blowing a 3-1 lead would be not ideal either. And maybe if Tibbs really shits the bed, that'll be a conversation. But short of that, I mean, and I don't. I think he's been, like you said, he knows the personnel well inside and out. He's had his finger on the pulse. Like you can argue that the timing hasn't always been ideal for some of his adjustments, but he's made them when he had to. So I don't really anticipate that, but anything's possible. But short of that, like, yeah, like you didn't want to see them just look like they didn't belong with Cleveland. And after 4 games, no matter what happens from here on out, the question really, and I think it was Captain Pearl on Twitter mentioned this. Everyone was freaking out after Game 2, but here's the thing, right? We saw a couple years ago a 5 seed that was scrappy, that had a very ball dominant point guard, come into Madison Square Garden, take Game 1 as the road team and the road underdog. The Knicks came back in Game 2, but they were going back to Atlanta with a 1-1 split. Just like we were coming back to New York as the underdog, but with a 1-1 split. And we were puffing our chests after Game 2 too, right? Like we figured them out. That's a lot of people have said. I think even Reddick said that, right? Like the Cavs figured something out in Game 2, and I think that's going to be sustainable. And the Knicks just came home, just like Atlanta went home, and those 2 games weren't really. This game ended up being close in the third. That Cleveland's last gasp, but the real question is, I don't think Cleveland is a bad team. I think they're very good, and I think they match up well with the Knicks. And there's the series is far from over, but I think it's looked more often like Cleveland doesn't belong on the same floor as the Knicks than the reverse. And that's how I felt all Atlanta series, that we didn't belong on the floor with them for the most part.
It looks like we have more talent. That's what I felt like in that Atlanta series. It was like they have more talent than us, which is why there was things that Thibs didn't do in that series that I was like, why wouldn't you do that? But I also there were people that were like, oh, well, Thibs lost us this series or whatever. And I was like, no, I don't think that's what happened. I think like we just didn't have the talent. If you have like Reggie Bullock out there getting locked up by Trae Young, there's not much you can fucking do.
Yeah, we went from Reggie Bullock and Alec Burks.
Well, let's not put Alec Burks in the same boat as Reggie Bullock here.
But like you went from those being your wings, and I do think Alec Burks in this team, by the way, would be really good too.
Yeah,
I think
he'd be fucking awesome.
You had those guys, and we've upgraded now to Josh Hart, and Quentin Grimes, right? So
and quickly, kind of, right, because he's like kind of plays that off-ball role, that two-guard role.
He was on that team as well, with the Rose,
but he wasn't. He was not. He was
a bad defender, or he was like not a great defender at all.
Yeah, now he's like making rotations, and I'm like, are you a fucking genius? Like, what's going on here?
And I think a criticism a lot of people have had, and Thibs might believe this to some extent. Part of the reason he probably closed with Hart as well as the fact that Hart was just playing phenomenally and has an impact on the glass that even Quickly doesn't. But one of the things people have said is like Quickly can be. People have pointed out Quickly's point of attack defense as maybe not stellar, right? Or blowing up handoffs or whatever. when he's asked to do that though, when he's no, I'm not picking anyone, and
I
like the
know, I know.
synergy stats do somewhat lend some credence to this. Now it's a low volume for quickly, but there's reason to expect like he's not intimidating at the point of attack, but he can be. And when he's asked to do that, and like when he's asked to like usually plays a little bit more conservatively against screens and handoffs and stuff because I think the Knicks like to do that. When he's asked, and I think when Thibs says, "All right, you stick to that motherfucker like glue," you saw it. I think there was a game where it was Melton or Patty Mills like was just hitting a bunch of threes against the Knicks, and then quickly was like playing in trail, right? And that wasn't good enough. He stuck to him like white on rice. You saw with Garland. Garland like had that one transition three on quickly in game two. Where I was like, man, you cannot give that up. Quickly, like whenever he's had been in Garland, like he has been in his jersey.
Dude,
So it's
he
not that
he
quickly
he
isn't a good point of attack
totally
defender. He just
he locked Garland the fuck up. Like yesterday, I'm telling you, if you go back and rewatch it, again, I didn't love Tibbs's. Um, I thought he took too long to make adjustments in the third quarter to change the lineup and whatever. But like once quickly came back in, all that all that shit that Garland was doing, it was done. It was done. That the game was finished by like he came in, I think, with like 3 minutes left in the third quarter, and he checked out with about 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. But the game was done at that point. And like that's not to say he won us the game, but he took Garland out of the rhythm that he was in.
I think that actually
And
gave him more confidence on offense too. I think even yesterday, I thought he played with confidence on offense. At least the first stretch, he just missed a couple of shots off the
yeah,
glass.
and I think like really, I mentioned this on the rundown after game three, but like I didn't think he played without confidence in the second half, or in the game really at all. I think he deserves a lot of credit because he is playing. He's like it is hard when you've had the games he's had this year, and he's the way he's like exploded towards the end of the season to scale it back and to play a role for the team, and he is doing that, and he is like what he has had to do offensively in a lot of ways is completely selfless. Like when he's on the floor with Brunson, the entire plan is for him to be used to free up Brunson and get him a better matchup or whatever it is. To do that and to still be as effective as he is, and then to play with the energy and effort he is defensively, it just says like that's why like I love him, and I think why Knicks fans love him is like it's not like all the scoring and all that shit is great, and obviously that can make him and even elevate him to a different level of player. But the fact that he can have games like he did yesterday, score no points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist, and you can still feel like he had a positive impact on the game. It's you don't find a lot of players like that. Like I think honestly, I've been kind of we kind of bounced around like who is he? Like what's a like close comparison? But like a guy who I think he actually is like compares favorably with. He's like a super offensive version of this guy, but like it's like DeAnthony Melton. Like those guys can just fill in gaps on teams and provide value in so many different ways and do so many different tasks. And like I don't know what you want to call him, starter, sick man, fucking, star, role player, whatever. Those guys are invaluable. And I think he's been really, really good these last 2 games, even if the offense isn't eye popping. Like, and that's not to say he's been the best player on the team or anything. I think RJ was again. I think these last 2 games for RJ are probably, considering the stakes and everything, the 2 best performances of his career. He's
Game
been
four definitely, I would say, hands down. Like he's
yeah
had 44 in a regular season game. Like compared to this is a different level against the
yeah
best defense
yeah.
to go up 3-1. And by the way, like going back to RJ, also like
And he was 4-7 in the fourth quarter. Like he delivered when you needed him to deliver.
and he delivered. He had timely baskets in the third when the Knicks were shitting the bed, and Brunson was not playing well. Like Thibs had gotten so frustrated that he actually went back to the center screens, which as we've seen just haven't worked these series that well. And it was RJ, after that Hartenstein block, getting down court, finishing, getting up in transition, had a couple of nice drives and finishes to keep the Knicks afloat in a time where they were really reeling. And I said this in game one. I don't think you agreed, but like game one in the first quarter when Brunson was in foul trouble, RJ didn't score the rest of the game, but like he had a couple of buckets and some of his assists and playmaking when quickly was struggling on ball. Brunson's out. And Brunson and Randle were both on the bench. He has made plays in timely moments like this series for much of it, and I don't think that's something to discount necessarily. Yes,
No,
all
it's
40
huge.
minutes are the same.
Yeah.
And
The game 3 and game 4 from him, like, yeah, it felt like every time they needed to get a bucket, it was either Brunson or it was him. Like he's delivered, like you said, or Hart. I mean, Hart, that floater he made was, if I was a Cavs fan, I'd have been so fucking mad about
they just
that.
threw it up. I think even he knew like that was bullshit.
Yeah.
And I would, yeah, I mean that's fair to say. And going back to IQ, I think even game 4 when he went 0 for 4, but like games 1 and 2, like without underselling it, he honestly looked like a deer in the headlights when they were coming up to set the screen and he had Jared Allen in his grill. He was playing very tentatively, but like it didn't seem, and like couldn't shake Garland. He looked completely, yeah, like a deer in the headlights. Like he wasn't ready on offense. And then game 3 and even yesterday, like there was no point when he was running the offense that I didn't feel like he was in control.
Yeah,
Right. So he
I
just
actually think it was weird because Deuce played like 5 minutes with him in that stretch. And I thought it was just odd that like Thibs called a timeout and like pulled Deuce. And I just thought it was really weird because I was like, I think they're playing really well. I don't think you need to take a timeout here at all. Why are you doing this? But yeah, like I agree. I don't think like he I do think he's playing within himself a little bit right now. But there's a difference between like playing scared and playing within yourself. And I think it's okay if like he went like it's okay if you dial it back. It's okay sometimes. Like they didn't need him to be a 20-point scorer yesterday, right? So like in that moment, if the best thing you can do is scale it back and then dial the fuck in on defense and make Garland's life hell. I mean, again, go watch his second half. He only played like 7 minutes or whatever it was in the second half. But that stint, like he just totally changed the complexion of the game and change like if on the broadcast, Van Gundy and Mark Jackson, they were talking about like, oh, the Cavs are the aggressors right now. You can see the Knicks body language isn't good. And they were right. And when he came in, like it changed the tenor of the game defensively. And I think that's where the Knicks really got control of the game again. And, by the time he checked out, I think they only had a 4-point lead, but like it really felt like they were very much in control at that point. And Cavs just couldn't get it back. And obviously you have like, Brunson, Hart, RJ all come up with huge buckets on the stretch. Hartenstein was awesome. But like, again, like this is the best part of the team, right? Is like you have every single night, there's a different guy that can step up and help you in different ways. And like, it's great. Like it's fucking awesome. I love watching this team and I love just like, how competitive they are. And honestly, like how selfless so many of the players are in this team, like we've seen Brunson take a backseat to various guys. We've seen Randle take a backseat to various guys. We've seen RJ obviously do that. Like we've seen Hart.
48 and Rose could have made a stink, right? Going all the way
Yeah.
down. They've been good soldiers, and despite getting paid and being veterans, like they understood what it was.
Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to game 5. I feel like the Knicks won't win that game, but who knows? I mean, they look like the better team right now. And they got 3 shots to close it out. It would be nice to just get it done. I know that an elimination game at home is, winning it at home would have its own appeal, but like I'd prefer, what did Giannis say? Don't play with your food. Or as Doc Rivers said, don't play with your meat. But yeah, the Knicks
Don't do
should
that,
not.
guys.
Yeah, the Knicks should not play with their food. If they could, it would be wonderful to just end it on the road in Cleveland and rest up for the second round. Because look, if Randall is hurt, obviously that would be nice to have a week off or whatever the fuck it is. Because I think this Bucks Heat series at minimum it's going to go 6 games, but it might go the distance just given how it started.
What is the situation with Giannis?
He's playing tonight. So they said as long as there's no setback, he's going to play tonight. So assuming if Giannis is back, I think they win this series 3 in a row in 6 games, but it's not inconceivable it could go the distance.
Yeah. And either way, I think the Knicks would have a pretty significant rest there. And yeah, to your point, we will need Randall for that series. So whatever they can do to get him healthy is a big deal. And the last thing I'll say is like, this doesn't seem like a team that's going to play with its food in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It
No,
like
it's not going to be. If they lose, they'll just lose because they didn't make
the
enough
Cavs play
shots.
better. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. They're not going to. It's not going to be an effort thing. All right. I think that's a good place to end it. Stacy, let the people know where they can find you and plug anything you'd like to plug.
Stacy Patton 89. I will plug, if you haven't checked out Matt Miranda's recap on yesterday's game, it starts out with a World War II analogy And when Matt Miranda starts off a game recap with a World War II analogy, you know it's going to be really good. And we also released another pod after the game yesterday, actually, too. So if you didn't hear enough about me talking about that game, you can check that out as well. But yeah.
Awesome. I will echo what Stacy has said. Matt's recap was fantastic. Just definitely give that a read. I will also plug all of the wonderful work at Strickland. The recaps have been great. There's been great draft content that Prez has put out, even though I'm sure that he's terrified the Knicks won't have a draft pick. But that is our pod for today. I hope everybody has a great week. Hopefully the Knicks win on Wednesday. And I will see you on Friday.